Well, thank you everybody for coming. I think it's a good time for us to get going here. Welcome to our fourth author talk of the 2011-2012 year. I'm Tom Urell. I'm the chair of the library's Programming and Communications Committee. Thanks again for coming. This semester we have a bunch of events planned that are going to cover a big wide range of topics. On Saturday, Linda Cohn will be here. She was the first woman sportscaster at ESPN. And then next week, Gary Braver will give a talk. He's a thriller novelist and a professor here. We will have later in the term in November a musical performance from a Boston jazz pianist, Al Vega, which is going to be really fun, I think. And if you haven't already, you can pick up a list of programs back at the sign-in table. We have information about all of them and sign up and all that good stuff. I would also ask for you to fill out a comment card at the end of today's talk and give it back to a library volunteer. We really like to gather feedback so that we can hear what you liked, what you didn't like, and what we can do to make these talks better, you know, what kind of stuff people want us to be doing here as part of our Meet the Author series and library programming in general. We're going to be filming today's event. It'll be on the library's YouTube and iTunes University channels. You can like us on Facebook, which is really fun. Follow us on Twitter. We're at Club Snell. So today's Meet the Author program with Joumana Haddad is made possible with help from our co-sponsors, the Northeastern International Affairs Program, the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies Department, and the NU Bookstore. I also want to thank the library's Programming Communications Committee, Ina Shaw, the library's Marketing and Advancement Assistant, and Kelsey Strout, our Marketing and Events Co-op, who has done all the legwork, put all this together. So Joumana Haddad is a renowned Lebanese writer, poet, and translator. She has published several widely acclaimed poetry collections, and her work has been translated into many languages and published all around the world. Currently, she is the editor of the cultural pages for the On Nahar newspaper, as well as the editor-in-chief of Jasad, a magazine of literature and art of the body. In 2006, she was awarded the Arab Press Prize, and in 2009, she won the International Prize North-South for poetry, among so many other awards that she's been given. She's also been the administrator of the International Prize for Arabic Fiction, and is now a member of the prizes board. Today, Ms. Haddad is here to speak with us about her book, I Killed Scheherazade. In the book, which has already been translated into more than 10 languages, Ms. Haddad breaks the silence of Arab women and challenges the widespread ideas of identity and womanhood in the Middle East, while exploring her own personal development and the profound effect literature has had on her life. Today's talk is going to be Q&A style. There isn't a prepared sort of narrative format, so everybody should have questions ready and we can have a conversation. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Joumana Haddad.
Hello, and thank you for being here. So, I smell food. I know the undertitle of the book is Confessions of an Angry Arab Woman, but now I'm more of a hungry Arab woman. But go ahead. And I would love to answer any question that you might have. Like Tom said, I prefer Q&A. I believe it creates an interaction. So shoot me. I know the first question is always difficult. Okay.
Yeah. So when did you start kind of getting the idea to write a book?
Yeah, well, actually this is like my 7th or 8th book, but I started writing since I was 10 or 11 maybe, and most of my production is poetry. I'm first and foremost a poet. I consider this book, which is something between an essay and a manifesto, like an accident, but it was necessary for me to write it because of two main reasons. First of all, since I've been traveling a lot lately because of my books, you know, going to many cities, whenever I felt that people were expecting something called Arab woman, what did they expect? What would you expect when they tell you an Arab woman?
Is that rhetorical? I think a lot of people think very conservative.
Just
Usually.
conservative, you know? Let's talk about, you know, the whole aspect. Wouldn't you think veiled, oppressed, you know, a victim, etc., etc.? This is what they used to expect when I was going to meet the readers. And of course, there was always, without generalizing, a sense of surprise to discover that not all Arab women are like that. So 2 years ago, when I started my magazine, Jasad, which means body, it's a cultural magazine that deals with the arts and literature of the body, I've had lots of journalists come and interview me. And one particular journalist asked me or said to me something that frustrated me. And that was, I didn't imagine that there is an Arab woman like you. And my first reaction was, of course, a kind of a resentment, because I knew, being an Arab and living in the Arab world, that there are other women like me and even more emancipated and free than me. But then I started thinking about that question that he asked. I started thinking about my experience for the past few years when meeting with foreign readers. And I thought, I have to admit that this stereotype is true. The Arab woman, which is represented in the cliche of the veiled, oppressed, subdued victim, exists. It's one of our biggest problems today. But even though she represents a majority, she does not represent the whole truth. So the image is incomplete. And I wanted to talk about the other part of this image, about the other Arab woman, about an Arab woman who, even though is part of a minority, represents, in my opinion, hope for the first one, and deserves to be heard and seen, especially in the West, in order to balance a little bit this, let's say, negative image that surrounds the Arab woman in general over here. So I started writing this book, but while I was writing, and while I was starting to write as an advocate to the journalists, and as a questioning of this particular side of my identity, I realized that I couldn't be intellectually honest if I just pointed my fingers and said, it's all your fault, this is how you see us, this is not how we are. I do believe that Arab women themselves have a big responsibility in shaping that image that is stuck to them abroad. So the crime, and I will talk later about it, why did I kill Shahrazad, or who is Shahrazad, and then why did I kill her, became a double crime. The first one was this woman that is omnipresent in the Western collective conscious, and who is solely represented as a poor, helpless soul that needs to be saved. And on the other hand, the Arab woman herself, who is not doing enough to change her life, and who is indulging herself in this image victim. So this is it, basically. This is the story of the book. And I did talk a lot in it about my own experiences, my own life, because sometimes people who hear what I say or watch what I do assume that I've had an unconventional upbringing in the Arab world, and that's not true at all. I've been raised in a very conservative, strict family. I remember that my dad wouldn't even let me go to the movies when I was a teenager. I got married when I was 19 just in order to be in control of my life. So this is just to tell you the way I was raised. This is also to say that even though these were the conditions that have shaped my childhood and my youth, I did manage to change them. And that's not because I'm a hero, or I'm particularly courageous, or I'm particularly talented. No, it's because I wanted to, because I wanted more for myself. And I think this is the most important message that I would like to convey, if there's a message. I don't know how I got here. You asked me how I started writing, but I can't shut up once I start. But I just want to say one more thing, and then I will take more questions. About Shahrazad, I don't know if many of you are familiar with who she is. I mean, she's a fictional character, very famous in Arabic culture and in Eastern culture in general. The heroine of the Arabian Nights, or the 1001 Nights. This is one major book. And the basic story of this book is that there's this king, Shahrayar, who has been betrayed by his wife. And so he decided that in order to not be betrayed anymore, he's going to marry a new wife every night and then kill her after consummating the marriage. And then comes Shahrazad. She was very articulate, smart, intelligent woman who managed to trick him into letting her survive. How? By telling him stories every night. She would tell him a new story, but she wouldn't tell him how the story ends. So he was curious to know what's going to happen next, and he would say, okay, I'm going to let you survive one more night. And this is how, using this scheme, Shahrazad managed to survive for 1001 nights. And there are 1001 stories in the book. It's a beautiful book. I said she's articulate, educated, intelligent, and smart. So why did I kill her? I've had one main problem with Shahrazad since I discovered her and started reading this book. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, she conveys a wrong message. You know, she is negotiating over her basic right. In this case, it was survival. It was staying alive. In order to, she was telling the authority, who was the man in this case, stories in order to get her basic right to survive. And even though I think that this was a very avant-garde thing to do at the moment when the book has been written, I think that we should stop this vicious circle by now. And when I say Shahrazad, I'm not talking only about the Arab Shahrazad. I see many Shahrazads in the West. Wherever I go, I see many women who feel that in order to get what is due to them, they need to negotiate and compromise and bribe the authority, whether it's the patriarchal authority, the religious authority, the political authority, the social authority, etc., etc. And this is why I killed her, basically. It's like a symbol in order to say that enough with this depreciation of ourselves, enough with this lack of belief in our strength and in our rights. And we shouldn't be begging for what is duly ours. And it's all in the perspective. I'm not talking about the actions that should be done. That's a different topic. But I think about how we see ourselves. Many Arab women are convinced, because of so many years of brainwashing, that they are indeed a lesser person, that they don't have, they cannot enjoy the same rights as the man, that they are not as capable as a man, etc., etc. So I think that the main primary target is to believe in ourselves, and this is why I killed her, in order for her to reinvent herself and start telling her stories for her own pleasure and not in order to get something in return.
the recent uprisings, popular uprisings in the Middle East are going to impact the situation for Arab women?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me this. You know, I know that there has been a lot of euphoria in the West and in the Arab world regarding the revolutions, and of course I was as proud as any other person watching these people, you know, demonstrate, and those dictators should have been removed a long, long time ago. I don't know how they have survived until now. But I cannot afford the luxury of optimism. Why? And I'll explain it. One of the main tools I personally use in order to measure a country's march towards democracy, dignity, freedom, etc. One of these tools is the situation of women and the role of women. And of course, we have all seen women in Tunisia and in Egypt demonstrate, participate, contribute in the revolutions. But then what worried me is that when the revolutions have been achieved, and at the moment of the formation of the new structures, they have almost disappeared, except for a few voices. There is almost no talk about women's equality, women's rights, women's role in the new society. It is as if these women themselves have accepted to be used as like an instrument to validate the revolution or the movement, and then have been put aside because they are not useful anymore. And this I cannot accept. And you cannot come and tell me that first you have to achieve democracy and fight corruption, etc., etc., and then you can talk about women's rights. That's not true, because there is no democracy without respect of the human being, and the woman is a human being. So I cannot be convinced, and this is why I'm quite skeptical. I haven't lost hope, even though if we take Tunisia and Egypt, there's only one woman minister in the government post-revolution, two in Tunisia, which is almost nothing. And like I said, there isn't enough talk and discussion from the women themselves. And this is what makes me even more angry. I mean, do something for yourself. Be selfish for once, you know, selfish in between brackets. But it's too soon to tell. Yeah?
Hi, I really liked one book you edited called Medina,
Yeah.
about the cities of the Middle East. I'm curious as to, you tell us that you're what I would call a liberated woman, and I wonder who you consider supported you when you were growing up, because it was not in your family. Who helped you create the person that you are today?
A very important accomplice. Books. Reading, literature.
Which books? Which
It
books?
has changed my life. I mean, I've started reading since I was 5 or 6. And my father, even though he was very conservative, was a great intellectual, and he had this huge library at home, and he loved whenever he came home, the first thing he did was open a book and start reading. So I picked up, in a way, this habit, this wonderful habit from him, since my early childhood. And he used to bring me books adapted to my age. But then at the age of 11, 12, I started to wait for him to get out of the house, and I went, put a chair, and started reaching for the books he had hidden away from me. And this is how I read, exactly. Yeah. I read like terrible books when I was 12. I read Justine by the Marquis de Sade when I was 12. I read Nabokov, Miller, Anais Nin when I was just 12, 13, 14 years old. Even though, and I talk about this experience in the book, and I know that such a shock is not easy for a 12-year-old or for such a young person, but it has been very healthy in my particular case. Why? I was in a country where war started when I was 4, so there were lots of constrictions outside, lots of violence, war, and a certain impossibility to live your life. I was also raised in a very conservative family inside, very loving, but very conservative. The only thing that they used to tell us is study, 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 read, read, read. And that was fine with me. But there was also a lot of no-nos. This is something you shouldn't say. This is something you shouldn't do. This is something you shouldn't think. And for someone who has always wanted, since she remembers, to be a writer, that was not healthy. So these readings helped me liberate myself from a lot of constraints. I learned that in my imagination, anything was possible. And this is how, you know, this freedom began in my head and then moved to my expression when I started writing, and then later on to my life. I mean, to my private life and the way I live it, and the way I also raise my kids, or live my relationships, or take my decisions, etc. But that was it, the books. They have really saved me, and that's not an overstatement. I really believe that I would never have been the person that I am today without these books. Yeah.
You mentioned some of these books and they sound like they're Western writers, but there are a lot of angry Arab women who came before you also. Did they influence you, and which ones?
I used to read a lot of Western literature, mainly French. You know, we had in Lebanon being a francophone country, we had, I say, the luck of learning French as a mother tongue. And lots of these books that I mentioned, and a lot more, I gave these as an example because they represent in a way the extreme of what I used to read, were not available in Arabic, but were available in French. So in a way, the French language was my window to the forbidden, or my window to the things that were not directly discussed in my own culture. And when I say this, I have to remind you that in the Arabic culture, if you go back to books that have been written in the 10th century or 11th century, like the Arabian Nights, like The Scented Garden by Sheikh Nafzawi, and lots of other books, some of the texts in these books would make the most obscene contemporary writer blush today. You couldn't get away with writing things like that. But they were not available to me unless in a censored version. I read the Arabian Nights in a censored version. I only read the uncensored version in my 30s, and I thought, what? What? It's a totally different book. It's a totally different experience. The first one seemed like a book for kids, you know? And the uncensored version is like, I don't know, a pornographic series of stories, etc. Really, I'm not exaggerating. It is like that. So this is why most of my readings, the readings that really affected me when I was growing up, were more from the Western culture. But I also read lots of Lebanese writers. And you mentioned women. I've never made a difference in my readings between women writers and men writers. They have influenced me alike. I've never considered that, you know, women writers are a genre by itself. And it sometimes, you know, frustrates me when I see like an anthology of Arab women, for example, or of, Chinese women. I've never seen an anthology of Arab men writers, or an anthology of Chinese men writers. It's this positive, you know, discrimination is also a way to say, a way to be condescending, in my opinion. So I've been influenced by men writers and women writers alike. Yeah.
Us Arabs, we know that Lebanon is one of the most liberal countries among the Arab
I'm
countries.
so happy you said that, because it's not true. But I will go ahead.
We consider
I
that.
know. It's
It's a different opinion.
yeah.
So I was surprised when you said some books where you weren't able to read them, you know, because isn't like Lebanon a bit liberal that they shouldn't like ban books from being published?
Books and films are banned in Lebanon all the time nowadays, not only when I was growing up. But I'm going to tell you something about this particular image. Yes, of course, Lebanon has a bigger margin of freedom, but it's still a margin. And it's a very superficial kind of freedom. Let's talk about the women, for example. Lebanese women feel that they are free and emancipated, at least most of them or many of them, just because they can wear whatever they want. They can go dancing in their wonder bras until 4 o'clock in the morning. Whenever they talk about Lebanon, they will definitely mention the nightlife in Beirut. And you will see those women dancing on the bars, definitely. So these women think that they are free because they are able to do that. And I'm not denying their right to do that, quite the contrary. It's an absolute right for each and every person to do and live her private life the way she wants. But what I'm saying, if you go back to the laws in Lebanon, I feel ashamed that I'm Lebanese when I read those laws. They are so discriminative towards women in a way that you wouldn't believe. So what is happening is that women are distracted in this comfort of superficial freedom, of movement, you know, and they're not thinking about the important things. They're not thinking, or they're not thinking enough, because some women are and are doing something about it. They're not thinking that a Lebanese woman, if she marries a foreigner, cannot give her nationality to her kids. So it means she's a second-hand citizen. They're not thinking that in cases of divorce, she's always, you know, the weaker link, always. Because all these private affairs are ruled by different religions. And when I say religion, let me explain this to you, and I talk about this in the book. Because many times when we talk about the situation of women, the first thing that pops into mind is Islam. I have been raised a Catholic. I'm now an atheist, but having been raised a Catholic, I can assure you that the patriarchal system in the Catholic Church is no better than the one in Islam. In fact, I think that the three monotheist religions are condescending at best with the women, and sometimes even misogynic. I have studied the texts. I'm not talking about the interpretations. I'm talking about the texts themselves. So no, Lebanon is no different, only in the appearance. And what does the appearance do, basically? Nothing. Yeah?
What's the way forward?
The way forward, I really don't know. To tell you the truth, I really don't know. Because, you know, we are stuck in a world where you are doomed not to see the bigger picture. You just need to keep on pushing and banging your head on that wall, even if you don't know what's coming after that wall. You know, it's not like you see something and you're going towards it. Sometimes it's so narrow and the limits are so close. You just have to keep on, you know, doing whatever you think is bringing you closer to a better tomorrow. But I think that you have already noticed that I'm not pessimistic, but I cannot, being Lebanese, first and foremost, I cannot afford the luxury of, you know, being euphoric about it or too optimistic. Yeah.
Who were your idols when you were young?
Yeah, well, again, they were the writers, you know. I used to remember that my friends were dreaming about Bruce Springsteen or Robert De Niro or whatever, and I used to think about Mayakovsky and Pavese and writers all over the world, writers that I used to fall in love with the writers. So, but my idols in real life, I mean, I don't believe in this idol theory, you know, because many of my idols are just simple people who are basically who are wanting, first of all, more for themselves, and who are trying to go there. It's like, for example, let me give you an example. My mother. My mother has had a completely different life than the one I did. But she always wanted more for me. She planted in me the desire to want more for myself. And this is why nowadays when they ask me, so what could like an Arab woman with really a helpless situation do? I mean, you can travel, you can write, you can express yourself. Some women don't have this. What could they do? And I tell them, let's take the example of the woman who is told your only duty is to stay at home and raise the kids. Raising the kids. How is she raising the kids? Without being unfair and without generalizing. In many cases, while she complains of her destiny, she raises her daughters to dream ultimately of the good husband, and she raises her sons to become, you know, macho like her husband or her father or her brother. It's like a vicious circle, and she is not making anything to get out of it. What she could. It's a great power, education. Just by, like I said, by giving them this desire to want more for themselves, by giving your daughter the desire to achieve things in life, and not only be a gift for someone, for a man, and by teaching your sons to respect women and know that women are not there just to serve you. They are individual human beings who have dreams, careers, ambitions, etc. So, you see? Yeah?
Don't you think that the Arab women in the Arab countries nowadays are getting their right, but like in a slow progress?
Like in a what?
In a slow progress. Like they're getting their rights, they're getting their demands, but it's a slow progress. No, because with all due respect, but I disagree because I come from a country where
Where are you from?
Saudi Arabia. So I think women in my country are in much worse condition than women in Lebanon. I'm sorry to say this.
Definitely. You're not saying.
'Cause they
You're
don't have-
definitely, I agree.
They don't have their voice, okay?
I'm sorry, I agree.
So they don't have their
I
voice.
agree.
So that's why I'm saying there is progress, but there's like slow progress. So that's why I'm surprised when you
What
say
progress are you talking about?
I
If you're
mean-
talking about the right to vote that they had like a month ago,
No, it's not that.
what progress? Explain to me. I mean, I don't want to offend you. I don't want to offend you. I completely feel like when I'm talking about the Saudi woman, I feel like I am Saudi. I get into her skin. I allow myself that. I cannot understand how, even in a slow version that you're talking about, even if I have to accept that, how in 2011 a woman cannot even drive a car.
It's not a complicated issue.
It is. I'm sorry. If it's not there yet, it means it's a complicated issue. It's absurd. It's impossible.
We need a driver to
Okay, let's
drive.
not talk about this. But I mean, it's like, what are you talking about?
It's not.
Where's the slow progress?
complicated.
Where is it?
I mean, okay, women want
Women
to drive.
cannot travel by themselves. If they walk the street, they have to be followed by a male, even if it's 7-year-old.
Yes.
What insult is it to you as an identity, as a
But
human being?
that comes from our religion.
No.
Our
I think
country-
I would like to
No.
hear the voice of your Saudi
Yes,
colleague,
yes.
because she's a woman, you know, there's a difference.
We need to have a driver to go anywhere. Let's say I can't afford a driver. Let's say I can't afford. I need to have my brother has to drive, and if I want to go somewhere.
Anything, they have to allow it.
Yeah, and let's think of this situation. My mother, if my mother is divorced, who is her? It's like
Mahram.
mahram. Yeah, mahram.
I'm not gonna even explain what
Male
And the
guardian.
brother who
Male guardian.
Exactly.
and the first son is 15 years old, he becomes her mahram.
He can tell her what to do.
It's an insult.
Also, it's not part of the religion. Like it's
He
not-
can't tell
This
her
is
what to do.
endless.
No, I'm sorry.
Some families, the 15-year-old or the 20-year-old controls. What
Okay, these are the.
I'm sorry.
And what's your name?
Abdulaziz.
Abdulaziz, have you ever seen, let's move to another topic, and that will be my last comment, because I would like to take have you ever seen a Saudi man all wearing black and only showing a bit of his eyes? Have you ever seen a Saudi man eating, having to do like this in order to eat?
But,
Have you?
You have the wrong image because not
It's
all.
not the wrong image.
No, I'm
I
sorry.
see them all the
But not
time.
all- but
It's
not
an
all Saudi-
insult.
No, no, no.
Why?
Because wearing
Why?
the burqa is not like required or it's
Really?
by design. No, I'm sorry. You
Give
should come.
me a break.
No, you should come to visit Saudi because basically you have the wrong image. Not all women like wear the burqa because it's optional. They wear the veil. So I guess you have the wrong image about Saudi women. I disagree with
He
you.
wants to convert you.
It's so easy to convert me. I mean, like,
No, it's optional.
you had a question there.
Yeah. First, I just want to say that maybe that's a certain Wahhabi interpretation of Islam, but I'm Muslim. I've grown up Muslim. My mom's a hijabi. she started a madrasa in Canada where I'm from, and honestly, there is no law in Islam that says women can't drive. That's not part of our religion.
Exactly.
Sorry, I just needed to
I'm
say
not
that.
saying
It's
that.
actually quite infuriating. But aside from that, I spent the last year living in Jordan. I was working with an attorney there, and the same law that's in Lebanon regarding the citizenship issue is also, troublingly, it's also the same in Jordan. And so I was just wondering about legal reform and if there's.
I know.
Yeah, and I mean, I
Well,
know that there's been some impetuses over the years to try to change it. It's just really, and I don't know if everyone understands the law, but she did explain it earlier, but it's pretty much if you're a Lebanese man or a Jordanian man, you can, if you marry a foreigner, you can transfer your citizenship to them. But if you're a woman, you can't. And people use, I worked in a Palestinian refugee camp in Jordan, and everyone would say to me, that was Jordanian, or even my friends in Lebanon, well, it's because there's so many Palestinian refugees that
Oh, that's
yeah,
just
this is an excuse, you know.
It's
I
an excuse.
essentially think it's an excuse. So I just wanted to get your opinion on.
I don't think that the legal reforms are as efficient and fast as they should be. Let me give you an example. Only a month ago, and you would understand that having lived in Jordan, because that's also a big problem in Jordan. Only a month ago did they cancel in the Lebanese law, how do you say that, the possibility to forgive the man who commits a crime of honor. Which means, before that, a man would commit a crime of honor if he sees his wife committing adultery, or he knows that his daughter is not a virgin anymore. Oh my God. He can kill her, and he can get away with it, saying it's a crime of honor, you know. Only a month ago did they start work on it, and you know that in Jordan
They
it's
still
even
have it.
worse.
They still have it.
I know,
Yeah,
I
you're
know.
trying to change it.
Now it still exists, so he is still treated in a different way, but it's not as if he can get away with it. So he is imprisoned for like a few months, so it's still bad. You see, we are talking in the 21st century about things that should have been solved a long, long time ago.
To focus on the future.
Yeah,
People are getting to the moon and having
a long time.
trips and to space now. We're thinking about how to
Drive a car. Let me end this by, I mean, they are telling me I have to end it. I have chosen an excerpt of the book that I would like to read for you. And it's actually the chapter that gave the title of the book, I Killed Shahrazad. I've never been a big fan of Shahrazad. I know that, being an Arab woman and all, I am supposed to be in admiration, or at least supportive of her, but I am not. It might look at first sight as if I were jealous of her. Shahrazad this, Shahrazad that. She just pops out of her Pandora's box every time an Arab woman writer is mentioned somewhere in the world. But I'm not jealous of her. I can't be, and I'll explain to you why. You see, Shahrazad is constantly celebrated in our culture as an educated woman who was resourceful and intelligent enough to save herself from death by bribing the man with her endless stories. But I've never really liked this bribing the man scheme. For one thing, I believe it sends women the wrong message. Persuade men, give them the things that you have and they want, and they'll spare you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems obvious that this method puts the man in the omnipotent position and the woman in the compromising inferior one. It does not teach women resistance and rebellion, as is implied when the character of Shahrazad is discussed. It rather teaches them concession and negotiation over their basic rights. It persuades them that pleasing the man, whether by a story, or a nice meal, or a pair of silicone tits, or a good fuck, or whatever, is the way to make it in life. And this is considered resistance. Call me short-sighted, but I don't think so. I've never been a big fan of Shahrazad, thus, I killed her. I strangled her with my two bare hands. Someone had to do it, eventually. But I can't take all the credit. Many accomplices have helped me pull off the slaughter along the way. Inciters who joined their hands, whether hostile or encouraging, with mine, and that consequently I need to gratefully list at this point. I killed Shahrazad with the hands of all the men who tried in different ways and under various masks to slash my throat. I killed Shahrazad with the hands of all the women who tried in different ways and under various masks to make me believe it is okay to have my throat slashed by a man. I killed Shahrazad with the hands of every writer forbidden, whether by an outer or an inner censor, to write what he felt like writing. I killed her with the hands of my mother, who did not wish me to have her kind of life, and made it possible right from the start. I killed her with the hands of my father, who from being afraid for me became proud of me, although the road in between was a very hard one. I killed Shahrazad with the hands of the different religious representatives and leaders who made me realize the difference between everlasting human ethics and futile values. I killed her with the hands of the Calvin Klein models, the James Bond girls, and every woman who is treated like a delicious piece of meat in magazines, movies, on TV screens, and in real life. I killed her with the hands of every man who was laughed at by his macho friends because he treats women decently. I killed her with the hands of my math teacher in 4th grade who wanted to convince me that boys were good with numbers and girls with cooking. And last but not least, I killed Shahrazad with the hands of Lilith, my seed, my root, my earth, and my truth. Yes, I killed Shahrazad. I killed her in me, and I am quite determined to kill everything and everyone that even remotely looks or behaves like her in my unconscious imagination and mind. So her sisters, daughters, granddaughters, and all her descendants had better close down the concessions business or stay away, far away from me. For there's an angry Arab woman out there. She's got her own stories not intended for negotiation, her own freedom not granted by anybody, and the perfect murder weapon. And there's no stopping her now. Thank you very much.